The artifacts did not arrive with banners or broadcasts. They slipped into the sector like oxygen into fire, unseen, unannounced, and terminal. No vault was built to hold them. No creed was prepared to name them. On the outer flanks of the Askelon sector, in silent corridors of derelict stations and the mouths of tectonic scars long forgotten by the administratum, the Faceless Trade emerged not as an event, but as an infection. It did not spread by violence, it spread by need. What began as salvage turned heretical when the objects stopped behaving like matter. Traders recovered discs that hummed only during prayer, rods that repelled human breath, lenses that refused to reflect imperial skin. At first, these were seen as curios, rare, valuable, misunderstood. But as hives bloomed from the ashes of buried alien cities and mining rigs stumbled upon vaults far older than humanity's claim to the stars, a market was born, not one of barter or coin, but of thresholds, each artifact, a doorway to something the Imperium refused to name. In the wake of the Vaxi atrocity, border worlds burned themselves hollow to escape further sanction. The Administratum pulled its teeth from a dozen subsectors, leaving hinterlands bare. There, in the vacuum between Imperial oversight and warp-born ruin, the trade took root. The Ordo Xenos would later declare that its growth was inevitable. That even had Vaxi not fallen, the trade would have emerged through the cracks of desperation. But they were wrong. It was not inevitability. It was invitation. The facelessness of the trade is not metaphor. Many participants literally remove identity. Masks of bone, circuitry, or Xenos resin are donned not to conceal guilt, but to replace it. Names are shed. Vox encryptions are layered with warp static. Traders speak in stolen languages, fragmented Eldar lexicons, corrupted binaric, hybridized Kroot pidgin. This is not disguise. It is initiation. To enter the trade is to step outside the species. Collectors rise from noble houses, rogue trader dynasties, and the ecclesiarchy's own failed inquisitors. Some seek profit, others seek ascension. The artifacts do not obey, they manipulate. A Desolum archivist once uncovered a weapon that refused to fire unless its wielder recited a Xenos liturgy. Another noble commissioned a room-sized sculpture from fused alien vertebrae, then found herself locked in it as it restructured into a containment cell. The trade does not suffer moderation. There is no grey market, no safe tier. A trinket sold to a minor Chartist family 3 decades ago turned out to be a cryo-encoded repository for extinct Martian dialects that triggered fatal seizures in every Mechanicus adept who read them. Another item, a shard of translucent ore, grew warm in proximity to guilt. It is now thought to have killed 11 psychers through emotional bleed. Askelon's decay is not passive. The trade amplifies entropy. Every item passed from hand to hand carries not only danger, but an echo of the transactions that came before. A last pistol sight engraved with alien fractals speaks secrets to those who sleep beside it. A glove of prehensile fibre remembers its first kill. The trade does not sell objects, it transmits history. The Ordo Xenos calls it faceless because its members know the true horror. No hierarchy governs it. No central cabal can be burned out. No syndicate holds the strings. It emerges wherever the Imperium weakens. It thrives in absence. And its reach is not limited by mass or distance. It operates in belief, in denial, in the need to touch something that outlived God. To destroy the trade is not to arrest smugglers. It is to cauterize dreams. It is to teach entire subsectors that curiosity is death, and that the only safety is ignorance. But ignorance cannot hold against the Xenos whisper. And so, behind every relic, behind every mask, behind every vault door that never should have opened, there is a simple truth. The trade is not a black market. It is a mirror. No one remembers when the first relic surfaced in Hive Desolum. No records remain, only witness accounts scrubbed from archives, Vox signatures expunged by unnamed data looms, and dead men who once thought themselves discreet. But the trade did not need a founding moment. Desolum was always ready. It did not need coaxing. It only needed something to feed on. The Hive itself is a contradiction sculpted in ferrocrete, a towering ziggurat of sacred function wrapped in ritualized filth. Its every level a prayer to labor and suffering. It is not a city, it is a sacrament of rot. And beneath its billions of souls, choked between strata of refuse and radiation, lies its oldest circulatory system, the Shadowglass veins. Abandoned waste tunnels, ancient transit routes, illegal excavation shafts, and forgotten shrines have coalesced into an autonomous under-economy. These are not maps, they are veins because they bleed. When the trade reached Desolum, it did not arrive in ships or through smugglers. It woke. The relics were already there, buried in substrata too deep for sanctioned drills, etched into temples collapsed before imperial colonization. Some came in with the refuse of other worlds. Others, it is whispered, were always part of the Hive's architecture, built into its foundations, waiting for minds broken enough to understand them. At first, it was glass. Not imperial crystal, nor warp-shattered remnants, but Desolum glass, spun into thin harmonics and folded with dust that sang when struck. They called it Shadowglass because its surface refused to reflect. The Adeptus Mechanicus dismissed it as failed production. Then one specimen began to pulse when placed near Psychers. Another melted a servo skull mid-flight. Another, when shattered, spoke in dreams to a scribe 3 levels away. A market formed in the deepest veins, lit not by lumen strips, but by the residual glow of alien metals. Masks were mandatory. Not to conceal identity, but to respect the artefacts. No bare skin touched them. Traders wore insulated gloves, some even flensing their fingertips to remove the temptation. Every sale was a pact, and every pact carried memory. Some relics refused to be bought. Others chose their owners, by bleeding, by glowing, or by shrieking at the wrong name. The enforcers tried to intervene. 6 precinct houses went silent in under a month. Those that returned reported hallucinations, sudden suicides, and devices that read intent before activating. One officer's Vox unit began broadcasting the last words of his dead partner hours before the body was discovered. After that, investigations ceased. Silence became policy. The Shadowglass veins were left to self-regulate. Noble families began sending proxies. The Merovin cartel acquired a pulsating monolith that erased recorded time for anyone in its presence. House Cadra smuggled in a Xenos loom that wove cloth that repelled cognition. A lower Hive surgeon bought a fragment that taught him how to amputate thought. Each acquisition poisoned the strata above it. As the relics climbed floors, the trade mutated. Less a transaction, more a symbiosis. By the time the Ordo Xenos intervened, it was too late. Mhers, the Mechanicus turned interpolator, uncovered a Desolum relic that altered vocal patterns when held. She used it to mimic a rogue acolyte's command codes, gaining access to vaults sealed since M35. What she found is unknown. But within 3 cycles, 7 acolyte teams were dead, 2 inquisitors had disappeared, and the Harmonium glass archive spontaneously combusted, without heat, flame, or chemical reaction. Only dust remained, and the scent of something that was not fire. And still the trade continued. It did not fear exposure. It required it. Like veins feeding a tumor, the Shadowglass paths beneath Desolum now serve a single function: conduit. The relics are not content to be stored. They must circulate. Each transaction is not a purchase. It is propagation. To this day, deep below Desolum's lowest registered strata, beyond heat and memory, a cathedral exists carved from singing obsidian. Traders call it the vault without history. Entry is not bought. It is earned through risk, silence, and relevance. Within its halls, artifacts negotiate with one another through proxies of flesh and misremembered oaths. In its nave sits a throne made from Xenos bone, shaped like a question no human can articulate. And on that throne, sometimes a trader is seen, not masked, not cloaked, but faceless in the literal sense. Smooth, null, unreflective. They do not speak. They only offer. Whatever you take, you pay for. but not always with coin. Sometimes with your capacity to regret. They gathered in silence, not out of reverence. Desolum bred no true reverence, but out of calculation. Every breath cost something down here, in the vacuum-flayed remnants of a cult mechanicus temple, deep beneath Hive Ascendant. The temple's cogwheel altar had long stopped spinning. The binary prayers etched into its pillars had melted during one of the sector's tectonic surges, rendering once holy inscriptions into warping, looping strings of corrupted machine litanies. But the architecture remained, and that was enough. The trade had claimed it. At the center of the dais, on slabs once meant for sacred offering, lay the goods, artefacts, Xenos, warp-touched, unclassifiable. They pulsed, slowly, steadily, like a heartbeat stolen from something that should never have lived. One piece shimmered in phases, cycling through color spectra the human eye was not designed to perceive. Another emitted soft vibrations that registered not on audio receptors, but in the bone. Trader Arles, his arms laced with xenografted synth tissue, stood unmoving behind a mask of obsidian. He wasn't interested in currency. He had arrived for significance. The Cerulean pact envoys across from him wore utilitarian masks of beaten iron and spoke in code-filtered modulation. But Arles didn't need their language. He watched their wrists, marked with the subdermal blues of oath-bonded smugglers. What mattered was what they brought, not what they said. The artifacts were insufficient, common finds. He was about to leave when Mhers arrived. Mhers had once been Mechanicus. Now she was something else. Her eyes were Desolum glass sockets, rotating lenses powered by a brasswork engine installed beneath her jaw. She no longer needed to speak aloud. Her thoughts bled through Auspec's resonance. But tonight, she let her fingers speak instead, playing an armonica of Shadowglass, coaxing notes that shimmered through the temple with mournful clarity. Her music held the room. Even the artifacts pulsed in time. She introduced a third party, a cloaked figure, neither trader nor pact. A scavenged mind, shattered during an excavation, kept alive by music. She wasn't there to deal. She was there to listen. Then came the bundle. Layer by layer, the pact unwrapped it. Within, runed discs, rods of phased metal with shifting surfaces, a glyph-etched prism that turned opaque whenever Imperial eyes fixed on it. These were not remnants. These were summons. Mhers stopped playing. Her lenses fluttered. Arles reached out, and the prism whispered his name. That was enough. Before the deal could finalize, the pews shifted. From the darkness beyond the altar came a figure, angular, weightless, masked in ivory. It carried a blade that rippled like water and split light like cracked memory. Arles knew what it was, Harlequin. There was no negotiation. The figure moved through light, shedding fragments of unreality with each step. Arles struck first, a power sword slash followed by an auto-pistol burst. Mole ducked, dragging the relics down behind the dais. The pactors screamed. One was already dead. The other caught Arles' spare blade and joined the fight. No one expected to win. You don't win against the laughing ones. The Harlequin danced through them. Its blade cut thought before it touched flesh. Its mask never changed, but those who saw it felt mocked. Every movement was a question they couldn't answer. But they bought time. Arles fainted. The pactor parried. Mhers emerged and activated one of the artifacts, a conical device that discharged viridescent light in a burst that tore through half the Harlequin's torso. It fell, not dead, but wounded, and then it vanished. Arles stood bloodied, breathing. Mhers examined the artifacts, no damage. The armonica began playing again, autonomously, as if it had stored the battle as melody. The pactor, wide-eyed, looked to Arles. "She's not one of us," he said. "She is now," Mhers answered. And that was how recruitment worked in the Temple of Stolen Tongues. You didn't get invited, you got tested. Survive the relics, survive the blade. Prove you understood that none of this was about wealth. It was about alignment. Outside, Desolum continued its prayers to labor and death. Inside, new names were erased, new artifacts catalogued. The armonica played its dirge, and deep in the walls, behind the stained vox grates and cracked auspex icons, something else began to hum. An echo, not of sound, but anticipation. The ivory mask was still bleeding. It lay skewered on a shard of steel, the expression frozen in eternal mockery, still twitching with the memory of movement. Even dead, the Harlequin's face seemed to laugh. Not from malice, not from joy, but from certainty. Arles kept his distance. His blade had pierced the mask's core, but something behind the glass of his rebreather told him it hadn't killed anything, only slowed it. Mole approached with more interest than caution, lifting the mask with brass-forged pincers. The inside was not empty. Latticework circuits shimmered in unnatural geometries. A fluid, neither blood nor oil, dripped in patterns that refused to stain her gloves. "This wasn't an assassin," she said. "It was a signal." The Temple of Stolen Tongues fell into lockdown. The relics were bound. Vox comms went silent. The armonica, once autonomous, now refused to sound. It had recorded the Harlequin's arrival. It had learned. And now, it would not play what it remembered. Word reached the surface within hours, but not through channels, not through reports, through dreams. Low-level psychers in Desolum's mid-hive began to scrawl curved symbols on their walls. A mutant scribe burned his own eyes out after carving an identical mask into the floor of a church. An officio medicae's autoquill began writing in mirrored Eldar runes until it exploded. The Ordo Xenos recognized the signs immediately. Harlequin troops do not respond to infractions. They do not engage in diplomacy. They do not trade. They appear. Not as reaction, but as narrative. The Laughing God does not punish blasphemy. It integrates it into the performance. The arrival of one Harlequin, let alone its death, meant the sector had crossed a threshold. The trade had stopped being a transaction. It had become a story. And Harlequins do not permit stories they have not authored. Within days, Desolum's relic market began to shift. Traders vanished. Smugglers went dark. Items previously dormant began activating, one by projecting holograms of theaters long destroyed, another by replaying the last breath of every owner who had ever held it. A rogue astropath was found dead with a mask carved into his skull, eyes wide open, his final transmission repeating one word: encore. The price of a Harlequin mask is not measured in thrones. It is measured in sequence. Once worn, the wearer becomes a part of the narrative. They are no longer traders, no longer inquisitorial assets, no longer deviant noble proxies. They are cast. Their fate is already choreographed. Their death, when it comes, will be aesthetic, meaningful, timed. Molars took the mask to her vault beneath Desolum's western flanks. It changed nothing. The room's lights dimmed. Chronometers lost time. Vox records began replaying her own voice out of sync. The mask never moved, but every recording of her since shows her eyes shifting half a second before her head does. Arles tried to sell the rest of the artifacts. He managed 3 transactions before the buyers combusted, non-violently, but irrevocably. Their flesh turned to vapor, their bones to static. The credits remained untouched. Eventually, Arles returned to Moles. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The mask had disappeared. Inquisitorial reports intercepted a signal burst from the Vaxian wreck line, 2 coordinates intersecting beneath the shattered bones of a dark Eldar skiff. The frequency was known only to Eldar. The meaning translated as a stage direction, Act 2. Retrieval. From that point on, Ordo Xenos protocol in Askelon sectors was updated. All known Harlequin mask sightings were to be treated as prelude vectors. The trade was no longer a containment issue, it was a performance, and the audience had already been chosen. Each trader, each relic, each vault, every transaction was now a line of dialogue. And the curtain had not yet risen. The stars beyond Askelon do not obey the laws of the Imperium, they obey writ. Each rogue trader fleet is a kingdom of contradictions, granted absolute authority and no oversight, sanctioned for contact with the Xenos and then cursed when they return. Their ships are cities, vaults, and cathedrals of their own making, studded with xenotech, heretic salvages, and navigational systems blessed by machine cults that no longer exist. To the administratum, they are legal anomalies. To the Ordo Xenos, they are vectors of infection. The Faceless Trade does not survive without them. It needs fleets that can bypass surveillance, cross into forbidden systems, and dock at orbital stations long erased from star charts. The rogue fleets provide this with ritual precision, not because they serve the trade, but because they understand something the Imperium will never admit. Ownership is not control. Permission is not purity. Writs of trade, handed down since the Great Crusade, hold the weight of law even when they enable treason. A rogue trader may recover an artifact from a dead Eldar world and claim it as salvage, may study it, may weaponize it. The language of these writs predates the Ordo Xenos. They allow for exploration, engagement, and appropriation. They allow for infection by contract. The Luftius dynasty alone has brought back over 700 unclassified relics from beyond the Halo Scar. One ship, the Anointed Transgressor, docked at Port Lockhart for exactly 3 hours. During that window, 4 inquisitorial agents died, 3 Mechanicus servers melted into their own metal, and 1 Lex mechanic began transcribing scriptures that name planets no longer in this reality. They tried to board the vessel. They never made it past the hangar. The ship's diplomatic shielding, encoded in a sealed writ from the 31st millennium, rendered it untouchable. The trade doesn't hide behind smugglers anymore. It hides behind precedent. The Serena dynasty operates differently, less blatant, more deliberate. They send emissaries, masked, cloaked, bearing hollow oaths and perfect manners, to negotiate with both inquisitors and shadow markets. Their vaults do not leak accidents. They offer samples, a piece of Xenos technology that can store 6 seconds of lost time, a shard of translucent memory stone that stores last words, a biological cloth that refuses to be stained, no matter what bleeds on it. The Serena do not trade for thrones. They trade for favors, landing rights, astropathic clearance, the safe return of someone presumed dead. They are not pirates. They are patrons. The Ordo Xenos tried to revoke their license. The Arbites declined to enforce. The Mechanicus refused to investigate. And the Ecclesiarchy remained silent. After all, one of their own preachers had begun to experience stigmata in the presence of Serena relics, and declared it holy. The trade has learned to intertwine legality with heresy. Not all artifacts cross borders in crates. Some are declared diplomatic gifts. Others are artifacts of anthropological interest. Some are simply mislabeled, flat capacitors instead of webway keys. A crate labelled statuary once held a Xenos grav core that caused orbital decay in a neighbouring station simply by being near it. In the void, legality is a religion, and writs are scripture. The rogue fleets are its high priests. They do not need to smuggle anymore. They declare. And the trade continues. The Ordo's dossiers on the rogue fleets are thick with contradictions. Some inquisitors want to destroy the fleets. Others want to join them. A few already have. The most radical among them believe the fleets are humanity's last hope of escaping doctrinal stagnation. That the artifacts they bring back are not poisons, but inoculations, doses of the alien to build immunity against extinction. These inquisitors don't report relics. They catalogue them. They don't destroy evidence. They accumulate it. To them, the trade isn't betrayal. It's survival. But even they are cautious, because not all rogue traders are loyalists. Some are dead. Some are possessed. Some are not what they began as. A few writs still circulate among vessels that have no human crew left. Ghost fleets, fleshless navigators, ships that dock in secret and trade with buyers who forget what they purchased. And in the heart of the trade, protected by a fortress of bureaucracy older than the current sector governance, a single vault remains sealed. No one opens it, not out of fear, out of obedience. The writ that protects it predates memory, and the creature inside is still dreaming. Before the artifacts are displayed, before they are bartered, before they are even named, they must first be moved. That is the function of the pact. The Cerulean pact does not have a headquarters, it has roots. Bleeding paths through fractured void lanes, forgotten warp corridors, and ghost stations never formally decommissioned. Their ships are thin, long and angled, like knives built for silence. They carry no banners, no transponder signals, no saints in their hull shrines. Just cargo, always cargo, and masks. Every pact member wears one. Not to conceal their faces, but because none remember what their faces were before the trade. Oath-bound, surgically marked, and chemically sterilized against identity, they are flesh machines bred to traffic contamination. Some are born on the routes, some are captured and reshaped, others volunteer. They believe in nothing but motion. In the trade, stasis is death. They serve as the circulatory system of the Faceless Trade, delivering Xenos relics from dead vaults, forgotten holds, and archaeological perimeters where Imperial troops never returned. Their silence is not strategy, it is conditioned obedience. Pact members do not speak aboard their own ships. They communicate in encoded pulses, mapped against blood flow and micro-gestures. No vox, no scribes, nothing that can be recorded. The Pact's oath is simple. Deliver what must not remain, receive what must not be seen. If questioned, die. If captured, explode. Emerald ghosts refer not to people, but to routes. Some corridors only open when navigated by vessels carrying certain relics. Others exist only during warp harmonics, aligned with particular Xenos moon rotations. These are not pathways, they are rituals. Navigating them is an act of communion, not calculation. One of the most infamous was Route 527, also known as the Wound Thread. It could only be accessed by flying through the debris field of a Necron-touched world, where time moved in short, violent seizures. Ships on the route arrived before they left. Cargo inventory updated after it had already been sold. One packed ship, the Silent Accord, used the route 13 times. It was found derelict on the 14th, its crew still alive, faces erased, holding relics never catalogued. They were dissected by the Ordo Xenos. Their remains were placed in anti-psychic vaults. Those vaults are now empty. The Pact does not care. It reformed. It always does. Each cell functions in isolation. Each trade is encrypted in artifact logic. The relics themselves choose their destination. Pact runners simply obey the vector. One runner, designated Rhea, was once captured by the Inquisition, interrogated for 87 hours. She never broke. Her mind was void-sealed. But when offered a relic to identify, a fragment of green-etched crystal from the Mhers Kappa dead vault, she sang. Not words, not even sound, just resonance. The walls cracked, the interrogators bled from the eyes. Rhea was never seen again. Her chains were left behind, fused into a single piece of silent metal. Mola vouched for her. Arls recruited her. She disappeared into the trade, where names mean less than function. That's what the Pact understands better than any other player in this black economy. You cannot traffic the artifacts without becoming one. Some Pact runners have begun to exhibit signs, not mutation, not possession, something else. Fingerprints that change daily. Irises that remember past lives. Blood that crystallizes when exposed to inquisitorial oath seals. No one studies them. No one records it. These are not side effects. These are conversions. They do not speak of loyalty. They do not need to. Their oaths are coded into their skin. If their ship crashes, the hull dissolves. If their cargo is captured, it burns itself from inside. The Pact does not hide secrets. It delivers them. And when they reach their destination, when the relics enter the vaults, the shrines, the corrupted forges and glass-lit museums, the Pact moves on. No reward, no rest, just new coordinates and the next ghost path through unreality. Because the trade is not an empire. It is not a guild. It is not a conspiracy. It is a function of entropy. And the Cerulean Pact are its veins. Before she was Moles, she was Magos Tiazel 9, Vox Savant of the Desolum subcohort, interfaced to a data loft so ancient it hummed in ligature cant. She was beautiful in the mechanicus sense. Her limbs were triple-jointed for access, her thought speed regulated by prayerware, and her faith in the Omnissiah was proven through repetition. 2,880 daily affirmations etched into a memory cascade by her own flensing mechadendrites. Then came the Vault of Three Tongues. It was meant to be a recovery operation. A vault uncovered by tectonic upheaval during the fourth Desolum quake cycle. Adeptus Archaeotechnica marked it pre-imperial. No active threats, no sentient systems. Mole entered with 6 servitors and 3 undertechs. Only she came out. She emerged mute. Her Vox systems refused to transmit. Her eyes had dissolved. In their place were lenses of glass not forged by any forge. Her skull had been rewritten. No scars, no implants removed. But her thought rhythm pulsed in Xenos non-metrics. Her prayers, when they returned, did not mention the Omnissiah. They mentioned tone. What Molars found in the vault was not text, not weapon, not relic. It was an instrument. An armonica, fashioned from Desolum Shadowglass, resting on a stand of fossilized bone and unknown metal. It was not silent. It played itself, at frequencies only recorded by neural residue and auditory hallucination. Her team died listening. Mole listened longer. When she returned, the Inquisition watched. When she began modifying the armonica, adding brass articulation, fine-tuning it with her own blood, they sent acolytes. None survived contact, not because she fought, because they heard. Mole did not kill them. She recorded their names in sound, and they stopped knowing who they were. The song wasn't music, it was identity interference. She rebuilt the armonica using Xenoglass, Mechanicus haptic engines, and fragments of vocal tracks harvested from preserved Xenos cadavers. It responded not just to touch, but to intent. Her performances began to alter environments. Lumen globes dimmed in harmony. Vox relays turned to static when she paused between notes. One Hive chapel, miles away, crumbled to dust during a single performance. Still, the trade welcomed her. To the Cerulean pact, she was more than a handler. She was a converter. She could prepare relics for transfer, cleanse them of embedded memories, or resurrect them if their functions had gone dormant. Some artifacts, it turned out, preferred to be sung to. Others required duets. Moles would play, and the artifact would pulse, change temperature, or bleed new forms of data. In time, she learned to compose. Her compositions became keys. Certain songs would unlock artifacts thought inert for millennia. Others caused relics to generate new components, growths of green-etched circuitry, recursive glyphs that disassembled cogitator archives miles away. The armonica became her tool, her voice, her archive. She stopped speaking aloud. Her thoughts were transmitted in modulated resonance. Some say she's no longer human, that the glass behind her socket sees beyond the spectrum of thought, that her bones have begun to chime when struck. But no one questions her. Because every trader, every smuggler, every radical, every rogue fleet courier needs her. Without moles, relics remain silent, dangerous, inert. But with her, they reveal. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't offer warnings. When Arlds brought her a relic that pulsed like a heartbeat and wept emerald ichor, she simply played. Within moments, it reconfigured itself into a blade made entirely of memory. The first wielder forgot his own name in exchange for perfect form. The Ordo Xenos has listed moles as a Category 7 risk, unclassifiable, non-hostile, not to be confronted unless full containment is guaranteed. No attempts have succeeded. Her armonica plays even when she's away from it. It stores memories not only of sound, but of the moment. A replayed note can reconstruct an entire transaction. Who was present, what was traded, what changed. The armonica remembers everything. It is not an instrument anymore. It is a witness. The relic was discovered on an uncharted moon orbiting the burned husk of Cardine Theta 12. It had no form, no mass. It was not visible on Auspex or Pictfeed. It existed only in reaction, a void in presence, a memory of contact. The explorers who found it couldn't describe what they had seen, only that when one of them stepped forward, they all remembered different lives. It was logged as an artifact class anomaly. But those who studied it soon began using another name: inheritance. The idea emerged from the heretic enclaves of the outer Askelon dark paths, backdoor archives and self-bastioned data libraries, protected by reprogrammed maintenance servitors and null-field generators. Here, in the silence between dead forge vaults, the theory was born that some artifacts of the Faceless Trade do not originate in the physical, that they are encoded experiences waiting for hosts, not items, but epigenetic transmissions, heritage divorced from flesh. An inquisitorial report from the Wilax Fringe described a single piece of green-flecked bone retrieved from a drifting wreck. Upon contact, the recipient began weeping in binary, not speaking it. Weeping, his tear ducts extruding chemical code that, when analysed, revealed partial transcripts of a species no longer catalogued. The man died an hour later, but before death, he wrote something on the wall of his holding cell. It was never a trade. It was a rebirth. These artifacts do not integrate through study. They do not activate through rites. They require sympathy, compatibility. Something in the recipient, a trauma, a frequency, a lineage fractured by exposure, must align. When it does, the inheritance begins, not in data, in transformation. One pact courier, known only as Venia, carried a shard for 32 days. She reported no effect, no pulse, no warmth. On the 33rd day, her skin began to dry, not from dehydration, from rejection. Her flesh flaked away in curled scrolls, each one etched in a language unknown to any translation protocol. Within hours, she was a standing statue of epidermal scripture, still breathing, still aware. She is kept now in a gravity-stabilized vault. She does not speak, but each day, a new section of her body peels free, revealing new text. Not loops, not repetitions, always new. And the message grows. Another case emerged from the ruins of a pre-imperial chapel on Desolum's polar reach. A scavenger retrieved what he thought was a devotional plate. It was flat, heavy, and etched with radial indentations. When activated by heat, it did not glow. It reflected things that hadn't happened yet, not visions, decisions, possibilities. The man sold it, not realizing the artifact had already memorized him. The next 5 people who held it all murdered each other, not from madness, from convergence. They acted out the same future, fought over the same betrayal. Each time, the plate predicted their final breath. It now resides in a rogue trader vault, sealed behind triple entropy seals. But according to its log, the next recorded owner is already listed, a name no one recognizes. The artifacts that transmit inheritance are feared even within the trade. Morley will not play for them. Alts does not negotiate their movement. The Cerulean pact does not root them. They travel alone, passed hand to hand by proxies already marked. They do not need protection. They protect themselves. One such artifact, a sphere of broken phase glass, was last seen in the Harmonium archive before it combusted. Its last recorded action was to erase a Margos biologist's lineage from Imperial census entirely, not kill him, not destroy his records. It extracted him from history. His descendants vanished. His research was never done. The name of his forge world is now unlisted. This is the true danger. The trade is not only trafficking the dangerous, it is resurrecting what the Imperium erased. Alien bloodlines, forgotten technologies, thought patterns incompatible with loyalty. The artifacts do not remember for curiosity's sake. They remember to replicate, to find hosts who will embody what they carry. To inherit is not to own, it is to continue. And within the darker circles of the trade, among radical inquisitors, excommunicated savants, and glass-veined psychers, there is growing suspicion that the relics are not echoes of lost cultures. They are seeds, The cold trade was never just commerce. It was never merely acquisition, transit, or the barter of forbidden things. It became something else the moment foresight entered its price. No one is certain when the first oracle emerged. The records are contradictory, shredded across data looms and dream vaults. Some name the Desolum nullpit seer, who reportedly foresaw the fall of a rogue trader vessel 5 years before it vanished into the Maelstrom Rift, right down to the name of the last scream. Others speak of the Comarach whalewife, a child who recited the names of her future purchasers before being sold into the lower Hive. But all versions agree on one thing. They were all touched by artefacts. Not psychers, not trained, not born gifted. The oracles of the cold trade are reactive phenomena, humans, augmetics, or hybrids, altered by proximity to relics that should not be observed, let alone possessed. The artifacts do not speak to them. They embed. What the oracles reveal is not future in the sanctioned sense. It is inevitability. The sound of consequence approaching. Most don't survive long. One was a Mechanicum skull shrine, unearthed from a wrecked Arcanos smuggler derelict. It began whispering dates, not in speech, through flickers of motion in incense smoke. One seer savant translated the patterns. Each was a death, recorded, accurate. It ceased whispering when the seer's own date appeared. Another oracle was human, or had been. It lived beneath Desolum's outer waterline zones, body bloated by sump exposure, mind riddled by memory rot. But it drew. Dozens of drawings a day, all from charcoal made of its own hair. Each illustration showed a different artifact, some catalogued, others still missing, all annotated with trade routes, death tolls, and consequence tiers. The Inquisition captured the oracle. Its tongue spoke glyphs, not words. They burned its works. The ink reappeared on the walls of inquisitorial chambers months later. Oracles are not reliable. They are not constant. But they are always correct, not about events, but about costs. An artifact retrieved from the tomb ship of a dead craft world caused seizures in 5 Ordo Xenos handlers. One oracle, when shown its picked capture, simply whispered, "Not yet. It hasn't killed its owner yet." Some oracles don't predict death. Some warn of misalignment. One saw a relic shaped like a flensed star, held by a mid-tier despot seeking ascension. The oracle convulsed, wrote a single phrase in its own blood: "Wrong bearer, right throne." It died moments later, organs displaced by unknown force. Radical inquisitors, the ones already compromised by proximity to the trade, keep oracles in sealed confession chambers. They feed them glyphs, relic scrap, residue from warp-touched containers. The oracles respond in shrieks, drawings, or inverted prayers. One entire cell of Ordo agents became mute after witnessing a 12-minute sermon from an oracle wrapped in chains of black glass. They didn't hear prophecy. They remembered it. Before it happened. Not all oracles are static. Some move with the trade, pass between trusted networks, treated as both asset and relic. A rumor persists of an oracle sealed in a hex vault, carted aboard rogue fleet tenders, and shown only the rarest items. It speaks in countdowns. No one knows to what. There is no training regimen, no methodology. The artifacts decide who may witness, and those who see are changed. One Ordo Malleus Lord declared the oracles an emerging threat class. Artifact-triggered pre-eschaton cognitives. A sub-branch of psi-reactive contamination, to be contained or erased. That lord died choking on a shard of Desolum glass. His last breath smelled of ozone. And still, the trade listens. Not out of faith, not out of fear, but because some of the oracles have started naming names, not of traders, not of inquisitors, but of relics that haven't been discovered yet. The future, it seems, is already in circulation. They were never a single group. They were never meant to be named. But something, an intercepted transmission, a decoded marginalia, an echo from a seized Vox casket, labelled them serrated query. Their mark was not physical. Their rights were not written. They operated in folds of imperial bureaucracy, where heresy takes the form of excessive curiosity. A tech adept asks for clarification on a redacted relic manifest. A junior scribe insists on cross-referencing dead languages. An Arbites investigator reconstructs smuggling patterns that don't lead to crime, but to meaning. The query didn't recruit. It waited for obsession. Their creed, when reconstructed from overlapping data fossils, appears deceptively simple. Truth is a structure built from forbidden shapes. The artifacts are pieces. The shape is divine. They believed the relics of the trade were not random, not scattered, not disparate Xenos technologies or warp anomalies. They were fragments of an intelligence, distributed across the stars, awaiting reconstruction. And they tried. The query infiltrated trade lines. They embedded sleeper agents inside rogue fleet manifests, encoded glyphs into shipping invoice metadata, weaponized archival procedures to track artifact migration. One Inquisitor's archives were secretly reformatted by query logic. He noticed too late. By the time he tried to purge the files, the ink had fused with his retinal overlays. He went blind. His mind didn't. The more the query saw, the more they dissolved. Identity became a hindrance. Language broke down. One subcell communicated only in mirrored hexagrams, each a compressed rendering of relic proximities. Another lived in stasis, time-locked while artifacts matured. Their vault was later found destroyed. Nothing missing. Everything melted. Not all died. Some burned themselves from the record instead. In one data vault, an Inquisition cipher team decrypted a message that had no sender, no timestamp, no address. Just one phrase. There are 999,998 fragments remaining. Query continues. The file deleted itself. The cogitator caught fire. The security servitor guarding it spoke the word "why" before rupturing. The query understood what the Order would not admit. The trade had a center, not a location, a structure, a pattern that emerged not in space but in motion, how the artifacts moved, who they reached, which carriers died, which vessels vanished. Not chaos, not entropy, choreography. Each trade, each loss, each oracle muttering in a sealed cube was a data point. They mapped it. A piece of that map was recovered, not by force, not by chance. It was delivered, handed over by a dying scribe whose veins spelled coordinates in swollen relief. The map was examined under 15 lenses of purity. It revealed nothing. Until one adept looked away, and the map activated. Not in light, in cognition. Those present experienced different memories, shared ones. None survived that night. Their deaths were synchronized across 5 sectors. Their names erased from ecclesiarchal liturgies. Their families executed. But the map survived. And the query was never found again. Because by then, it no longer needed to exist. It had distributed its mind across the trade, each relic a neuron, each smuggler a conduit. The query had burned itself from the record because it became the record. Ascalon's cold zones still glitch. Vox silence that matches old query frequencies. One rogue trader's dreaming navigator began sketching symbols on her flesh, glyphs from query renderings long purged. A Hive's garbage servitor spat out a sphere of living metal etched with the original query axiom. There is no cult to destroy anymore. There is only continuation, and the artifacts are still arriving. There are cities where trade ends, and there are cities where trade accumulates. Desolum is the latter. A hive world whose bones are layered with transactions, each generation compacting the debts of the last. Its spires rise in rusted spirals. Its lower sectors sleep in exhaust and pressure. Its maps lie. To understand the Faceless Trade is to walk Desolum's veins. The city was never designed, it was permitted. Hab structures grew around manufactoria that fed shrines that rose atop burial towers. Everything layered, nothing erased. Roads were paved not over streets, but over ossuaries. The cogitator grids still process directives from governors 10 centuries dead. Desolum functions not through governance, but inertia, and in its motionless core, the relics gather. It began slowly, lost cargo, unclaimed salvage, items not worth logging. But patterns emerged. Traders found artifacts they never sought. Vaults recorded anomalies they were never programmed to track. Entire smuggling routes warped toward Desolum's gravity. Not orbital. Narrative. The trade began to spiral inward. This was not coincidence. Desolum sits at the confluence of dead warp lanes and star-fractured translation scars. Its location was not strategic. It was ripe. Something in its foundation, perhaps the buried bones of the pre-imperial complex beneath Hive Primus, perhaps the geological strata woven with black crystal veins, acted as a resonant attractor. Artifacts dreamed of Desolum before they arrived, and the city welcomed them. By the time the Ordo Xenos formalized the anomaly, it was too late. The relics were not stored. They were embedded, in architecture, in machinery, in people. Mid-tier nobles began wearing heirlooms that pulsed in ultraviolet. Chapel bells rang harmonic phrases known only to dead craft worlds. One entire Hab sector became transparent for 6 hours, its residents visible from orbit, unmoving, their veins pulsing in synchrony. Desolum's rulers, the Chartist clans, responded by enforcing silence. Not censorship. Silence. Cogitator records were scrubbed. Histories were rewritten. One governor issued 32 simultaneous edicts, each contradicting the last. They remain in effect. No one speaks of the artifacts anymore, but they are everywhere. Even the Adeptus Arbites are infected, not in mind, in function. Patrol routes now mirror known relic movement paths. Their hounds bark in tritonal patterns first heard in alien tombs. One precinct fortress was found empty, desks intact, food uneaten, no sign of struggle. Just one message scorched into the floor. The halo cracked. We stepped through. Desolum's Adeptus Mechanicus presence is no better. The forge shrines whisper, not to each other, to the walls. Ductwork has begun reshaping itself into glyphs. Coolant systems hum in scales traced back to Mhers' armonica. One tech priest disassembled his own limbs to construct a device that does nothing, but emits a light that sterilizes truth from data slates. The Inquisition attempted lockdown. Desolum responded with compliance. All relics declared, all vaults opened, all traders accounted for, and nothing changed. Because the trade is no longer hidden here. It is the city itself. The relics don't flow through Desolum. They reside. They gestate. Some say Desolum is not a location anymore. It is a machine. Built from forgotten deals, buried cargo, and the deaths of those who asked too many questions. It trades not in artifacts, but in proximity to meaning. Stand in its lower halls long enough, and you'll forget what you were looking for. Touch its walls, and they'll remember your name before you speak. The cracked halo atop its ancient spire was once a cathedral. Now it pulses with green fire visible only through auspex tuned to despair. No one approaches it, not out of fear, out of recognition. The trade does not need vaults. It has a city, and Desolum is still growing. There are places beyond the charts where the stars no longer report, where the Mechanicus refuses to calibrate, where astropaths go blind not from screaming, but from silence. These are not fringe sectors. They are wilderness space, uncharted, unclaimed, and in theory, uninhabited. But ships come from there, not wrecks, not refugee vessels, emissaries. The first arrived in Askelon sector drift space 29 years ago. It bore no markings, no Vox challenge, no ident signature. But when scanned, it returned perfect Imperial registry, an explorator craft lost 6 millennia prior. The auspex showed biomass aboard. The boarding team entered through a hangar lit with bioluminescent veins. The walls pulsed, not with life, with memory. There were 3 emissaries inside. One wore void hymns etched into their skin. One spoke in reversed high Gothic that caused psychoactive dissonance. One remained silent, her mouth stitched shut with bone. All 3 handed over the same object, a single node of unknown alloy, smooth, cold, and encoded with an impossible astropathic channel. No warp trace, no power source. It transmitted nonetheless. The message was clear: we do not want war, We want passage. The trade must reach maturity. The emissaries were incinerated. The node survived. Since then, more have come. From ships half-made, hulls grown like coral, sails of crystallized blood, engines that breathe. Each time, the emissaries are different. Sometimes post-human, sometimes not human at all. One delegation arrived as a symbiotic choir, unable to speak unless in proximity to relics from the cold trade. Another came wearing masks of faces stolen from Ordo personnel dossiers. Always they bring artifacts, not to sell, not to offer, to introduce. The relics do not require verification. They identify us. The emissaries are not traders. They are custodians of continuity. They do not treat artifacts as objects. They refer to them as predecessors. Their theology is built on recursion, that each relic is a collapsed version of a future intelligence, folded backward through trauma, awaiting reconstruction via contact. They claim wilderness space is not uncharted. It is post-imperial. That the regions they come from are not voids, but civilizations lost to psychic erasure, memory plague, or deliberate theological disintegration. The Imperium did not forget them, it deleted them. The emissaries exist in defiance. Some call them Xenos. Others say they are us, after failure. Their message never changes. The trade must continue. Artifacts must move. Each transaction is not a risk, but a step towards structural resonance. A moment when the scattered relics of countless dead cultures synchronize into something new. Something that does not yet exist, but already exerts influence. The Inquisition calls them liars. The ecclesiarchy names them antichrists. The rogue fleets call them negotiators. A radical inquisitor once captured an emissary, not with force, with a gift. He offered a relic, an emerald disc recovered from the psychic collapse of Hive Sinicar, and the emissary stopped speaking. For 7 days it stared. Then it wept mercury and whispered, "The pattern reawakens. We will be remembered." It disintegrated into light. One trader now carries an emissary on his bridge. It does not speak. It only points to vaults, to routes, to relics not yet discovered. The trader's success rate is absolute, but his crew has begun to vanish. Their shadows remain. Their bodies do not. The trade does not fear the emissaries. It listens. Because they do not threaten. They remind. The artifacts are not just coming. They are returning. There are 78 cards in the Emperor's Tarot, or there were. In Desolum's scriptorium vaults, amid the half-burned codices and the oath-bled parchment, a new card appeared. Not added. Not illustrated. Inserted. The original deck was sanctified, blood-locked, and purity-bonded. Yet the deck now held 79 cards. The final card bore no name, just a symbol, an emerald spiral spiraling inward to a dotless center. No psyker touched it twice. The Emperor's Tarot is not mere superstition. It is not simple psychic resonance. Each draw is a sanctioned invocation, calibrated through millennia of layered ritual to align with the God Emperor's will. To tamper is to invoke judgment. To fracture the tarot is to fracture perception itself. And yet, the decks continue to change, not all at once, not visibly, but with each draw, the cracks grow. A high astropath aboard the vigilance-bound cruiser, Black Trust, reported drawing the tower reversed, 6 times in a row. Impossible odds. He drew again. The card bore his own death mask. He screamed for 3 days. He died the moment his ship translated into the warp. The decks are not breaking. They are remembering. Some now hold cards not seen since the Dark Age. Others bear symbols linked to Xenos lexicons, glyphs from the dead speech of the Uvath, motifs torn from the spiral cults of pre-coma pariahs. One card, labelled The Returning Vessel, depicts a trader's silhouette inside the Emperor's own nimbus. A sanctioned diviner burned himself alive after seeing it. The emissaries, when shown the altered decks, do not react with curiosity. They nod. Because to them, the Emperor's Tarot is not sacred. It is a message board, a shifting document of divine vectors, constantly rewritten by exposure to consciousness. The relics are modifying it. not as sabotage, as clarification. Each artifact passed through the trade adjusts the weight of the draw, the tilt of fate, the geometry of possibility. Some traders use the altered decks exclusively. They claim accuracy levels no sanctioned seer could match. One drew. The wheel inverted and changed course. His rival vessel exploded in its berth hours later. Another refused to read at all. His deck spontaneously caught fire. Inside the ashes, a card no one had seen before. The key of silence. No image. No text. Just blank space. When scanned, it returned a message. The end has already begun. Radical inquisitors now debate whether the decks should be destroyed. But some warn, destruction might finalize the signal. Others claim the original tarot was always incomplete, that the 78 cards were only one phase, a coded relic of a divine intelligence not yet whole. The Ordo Malleus tried to seal the altered decks. Each container melted, not from heat, from cognitive overload. The meaning density ruptured containment. One scribe transcribed a single new symbol from an emerging deck. The word for it does not exist. But when pronounced, it causes bleeding from the left ear and dream hallucinations of a city made from memory. The Emperor is silent. The Church denies all changes. And still, the decks fracture. Across the trade, relics are now drawn to the decks. Some whisper before a draw, some vibrate. One artifact, a shard of mirrored obsidian retrieved from the edge of wilderness space, cracked when placed near an altered card. The break formed a map. No sector matched. The shape was a tarot spread. 12 positions, one missing. The empty card slot had a label. He who returned before he left. And the trader who drew it never left port. The relics, the decks, the trade, they are no longer separate. Each exchange is not a transaction. It is reconfiguration, a ritual in pieces, a shape assembling itself from the reflections of what was forbidden. And the tarot, once divine clarity, is now a wound. Arles has no face. The Medici records confirm it. Bone grafts, skin weaves, muscle scaffolding, all generic. No match to any registered birth or death. He has no past, only aliases. No home port, only corridors. No ship, yet he is always arriving. Arles is not the most important figure in the trade. He is the finalist. There is a belief, spoken only once per tongue per cycle, that the Faceless Trade must end. Not collapse. Not get caught. End. And when it does, Arles will be the one who closes the circuit. He has said as much. To inquisitors, to pact leaders, to the emissaries. He does not speak often, but when he does, the relics fall silent. He is not a trader. He is the fulfillment clause. The artifacts respond to him. Locks unseal. Glyphs align. Mhers herself once refused to play until Arles simply stepped into the chamber. The armonica began without prompt. The melody turned to weeping. The walls cracked. He carries no weapon. Yet 10 Ordo agents died trying to hold him. Not from wounds, from resolution collapse. Each lost the memory of their mission, their name, their structure of loyalty. One began writing his own execution order. Another walked into the warp core and whispered, "It's his to finish." Arles trades only once per artifact, never twice. Each item he delivers goes dormant forever, or activates in a way no one expected. A blade that became a poem, a cube that turned into a song, a mirror that showed not the viewer, but who they would have become without the trade. He is always present before pattern convergence, those moments where relics, oracles, and emissaries align, not by plan, not by chance, as if summoned, as if written into the structure of consequence. Ships stall when he is near. Trade routes reroute. No navigation cogitator can chart his path. No customs registry logs his passage. But everyone remembers the deal, and every trader knows. Arles will die before the last trade. Not as penalty, not as martyrdom, as completion. His death will be the final transaction. The last artifact will not pass through his hands. It will recognize him. Some believe it already travels, folded in encoded memory, split across glyphs, hidden inside a dozen relics waiting to be recombined. Arles knows. He has always known. He is not seeking it, he is delivering himself. There is one message, preserved in a cold cipher relic, passed between 6 pact cells across a skeleton. It activates only when Arles is nearby. It reads, "He carries the end, but not the answer. The trade is not his story, he is its punctuation." They say his last breath will turn the final relic off. They say the void will recognize him. They say after Arles, there will be no more need to trade. It was never a market. It was never a network. It was never a web of smugglers, heretics, Xenos contraband, or psychic rot. The Faceless Trade was a ritual. Each artifact moved not because it was bought or stolen, but because it belonged somewhere. Each transaction was not a crime. It was a line in a liturgy, a line in a language no one wrote, but everyone performed. The trade is not an economy, it is an algorithm. The relics are variables, the smugglers are syntax, the oracles, punctuation, and the pattern has nearly run its course. Across the Ascalon sector, relics cease to respond. Glyphs no longer shimmer. Oracle utterances turn to static. Emissaries fall silent, some weeping, some folding into light. The harmonica players in the moles cry dissonant chords that do not resolve. Every vault yields less. Every draw of the tarot shatters the card before it's seen. The trade is not ending, it is reaching completion. But the shape it forms is not one of knowledge, not divinity, not revelation. It is memory, not of one thing, not of a species, of the cosmos itself. Each artifact, each smuggled item, each fragment of forbidden continuity is a pixel, one data point in the self-remembrance of existence. The relics do not tell us about the past. They tell the past about itself, and there is no last relic because the pattern never had a final input. It was never a puzzle with a missing piece. It was a recursion. The moment you looked for the end, the loop began again. The relics are still out there, but they no longer want to be found. They are the finders now. You don't seek the artifact. It seeks you. You don't complete the trade. It completes you. The final traders vanish one by one, leaving behind items that no longer activate. Not dead, just dormant. Their function fulfilled. Their purpose concluded. A mirror that no longer reflects. A cube that no longer hums. A stone that bleeds dust. But if you arrange them, something changes. A psychic topography, a gravitational hymn, a corridor of inference. And the shape you form is not random. It is you. The trade ends not with silence, but with recognition. The moment the relics see you and realize they have arrived. They were never tools. They were never contraband. They were messengers. The message is complete. There is no last relic. There is only the reminder that you were part of it. And you always were.